Today is Tuesday, July 6th, and this is Headers and Footers, the Toronto Stars UEFA Euro 2020 show. I'm your host, Brendan Dunlop. What a day. What a tournament. I mean, there hasn't been a bad game at Euro 2020 in this knockout stage. We had to wait an extra year for this tournament. And man, are we ever being treated to some great matches. Tuesday semifinal really lived up to the hype, didn't it? Doesn't always happen when two big powers meet each other, especially at this stage of the game. Unless you're Spanish or back the underdogs to win at Wembley, you had to have enjoyed what we were treated to through 120 minutes and penalties at Wembley. I'll speak with Nicky Bandini at Wembley in just a minute. But let's talk for a second about the Italians. A bit of revenge for losing in the final to Spain at Euro 2012, I'd say. In the past, Spain were known for tiki-taka. At Euro 2020, they were definitely known for going to extra time and missed chances, but we'll get to that. Alvaro Morata scored the ever-important goal to see Spain have a chance to go to penalties against the Italians, and Spain may have found a winner before reaching a penalty shootout, if not for some stellar Italian defending. There were some massive blocks from the Azzurri backline. But under Roberto Mancini, I mean, this just is not a team that is all about defending. They defend very, very well, but there's so much more than that. They've scored 12 goals at Euro 2020, and this unbeaten run that Italy are on, it truly is remarkable. Tuesday's win over Spain extends Italy's unbeaten run to 33 matches. Italy haven't lost since September of 2018, and that was in the Nations League, if you even want to count that. Sunday's final at Wembley will be Italy's 10th major final appearance and their first at the Euro since losing to Spain in 2012, but that's definitely in the rearview mirror. Their only European championship came in 1968, but Mancini has a country believing that this could be the year. My good friend Dan Capobianco sent me a text after that, said, for all Italians who suffered in this pandemic, this was for them, and they needed this. And really, I mean, what an incredible tournament. And he's totally right when you think about Bergamo being the epicenter of the crisis in Europe. Messina, Toloi, they play at Atalanta, who played a Champions League match in February 2020 that was blamed as a super spreader at the start of the pandemic. With everything the country has been through over the last 18 months, not to mention missing out on the World Cup in 2018, this Azzurri run has been incredible and incredibly entertaining for all of us to watch. Very pleased to be joined by Nicky Bandini in the press box at Wembley after that thrilling Italian victory on penalties. Nicky, what a match you were treated to over 120 minutes and penalties, of course, because Spain.
Honestly, my adrenaline is still going. We're a little while after the match now. The stands are pretty much empty, and I'm still buzzing from it because I thought that was an incredible game of football. It slowed down a little bit towards the end of extra time. I think that's inevitable. It felt like even the players on the pitch were completely not the same ones at the beginning of the game, to be honest. But there's still someone singing you can hear in the background there. But it was just frenetic the first 90 minutes. I felt like Spain were really on top, playing some fantastic football. Pedri, who literally didn't miss a single pass in the entire 90 minutes. But even while they were on the back foot, I was impressed with how Italy were trying to play out from the back. I felt like they were trying really ambitious balls out under pressure. They were trying to break that press from Spain constantly. I thought Chiellini was all the way up, sometimes across halfway, trying to break that press for Italy. So there was such an ambitious commitment, I felt like, in the football of both teams. It just made for a really, really compelling, brilliant game of football.
It really did. I mean, coming into this, I think a lot of people expected Italy to play the free-flowing football that we've seen. But in that first half, they weren't able to do that. In the first half, it seemed as though it was the pace that Spain were playing with that Italy kind of struggled with. In the second half, the substitutions led to the goal. And I thought Italy played much better kind of in the second half. But as that match went on, it was really just, a weathering of the storm. And as you say, they looked truly, truly exhausted in the end. So to get to penalties, seeing Giorgio Chiellini, I don't know if you could see it from the press box on the monitor, but his attitude in the coin toss with Jordi Alba was unbelievable. He was joking around, laughing. It looked like a testimonial match, which is also how Chiellini looked at the start of the game. So I wonder if his mindset was, this could be my last match for Italy tonight, so I'm just going to go and have fun with this. And that attitude that he had just translated to a real kind of calmness and composure that was solidified by the way Jorginho finished that off.
Maybe. I think Chiellini, it's fascinating actually, because I've been thinking about just now and talking about the fact that Spain, when they began their run of domination in 2008 by winning the Euros, they beat Italy in a shootout. Now, the one player on that Italy team who was around then, who is now, is Chiellini. He's the link between 2008 and now. And I think when you've been around as long as he has, when you've seen as much as he has in the game, perhaps you have more perspective. But I've felt like he's been having nothing but fun all through this tournament. You think back to the opening game against Turkey. I think it was that game. He made a sliding challenge in like the 80th minute, and they were already 3-0 up, and he jumps up, pumping his fists and enjoying himself. The Belgium game, there was a situation at a corner early on where him and Witsel were getting into it a little bit, and the referee came to separate them, and Chiellini just gave it this big beaming grin and gave Witsel a bear hug. And even in this game, even in that first half, at times when Spain were on top, there was a point where the ball had just gone behind and Chiellini turned, because the crowd here was very much Italians at one end and Spanish at the other end. He turned to the Italians behind the goal and he pumped his fists at them and got the whole place going. I think he's having nothing but fun at this tournament. And yes, of course, it's always more fun when you're winning, but I do think there's a little bit of that, I was going to say old man experience. He's younger than me, he's not an old man at all, but in footballing terms, an old man. That little bit of experience of perspective, of being able to think to yourself, you know what, I don't know how many more goals I'm going to get at this, I'm going to enjoy it while I'm here.
It did seem as though that Dani Olmo and some of the Spanish attack did seem to show the age of Italy's back line. Do you think that may be an issue for them going forward, be it England as attack that they're defending, or potentially Denmark in the final?
I mean, there's no two ways about it. If Spain had better finishing, they would have won this by a few, frankly. There was just so many chances they got. I don't know if it's so much about age. I think Chiellini and Bonucci in Serie A, they deal with fast strikers. It's not something they never deal with. It's not something they're incapable of dealing with. I think there was a lot of things going on, including the fact that the defence was adjusting to not having Spinazzola there. And I think Spinazzola's pace, his recovery speed actually, has been so fundamental to a lot of what Italy do. But even beyond that, just the shape was not comfortable for Italy in that first half. I thought Emerson, who obviously replaced Spinazzola, as an individual, I thought he was playing fine, but none of the connections were there. He was running to the places that were not where Insigne wanted him to be when he went forward, and perhaps the same was true at the back as well. He just didn't have that feeling with him and Chiellini and Bonucci, where they would look to their left and know where he was going to be. So there was a lot going on. I think Spain, we can talk about it as a negative from Italy's point of view. I think we should talk about it as well as a positive from Spain's point of view. I just thought they were brilliant. They used the ball so well. It was a big narrative in Italy coming into this game that both of these teams wanted to play with the ball. They were the teams that had, Spain had the most passes at this tournament, but Italy was number 2, and they were a team who also expected to have the ball, and Spain just didn't let Italy have it. And I think that's not necessarily a dynamic that I would expect with anyone else this tournament. I certainly don't think that England's game can be sort of put alongside Spain's as that sort of possession game. It's just not the football they play. So I'm certain that the next round, whether it's England or Denmark, will look different, just because different teams, different tactics, different players.
Dani Olmo, who started in place of Alvaro Morata, was exceptional up front, and maybe just a couple of inches, a bit more luck, and he would have been able to have finished it off. Alvaro Morata was dropped from the starting lineup, comes in as a substitute, scores in the 80th minute, and then misses the penalty. How do you think he will be talked about after this match in Europe, and where do you think Alvaro Morata goes from here in his career?
I think that was I thought that both of those misses for Spain felt so inevitable. Olmo, because he'd been missing everything, not just today, but all tournament, and he's played brilliantly, but I can't believe he was the one they sent up to go and take the first penalty, given that finishing is the one thing he hasn't been able to do. And Morata as well, I think he had such a positive impact in this game. He was the one who turned it around. He was the one who saved Spain from just going out in 90 minutes. And I don't know why, but I saw him walk up to take that penalty, and I saw Donnarumma in the goal, and I thought it's not going to go. It's not going in. I think there's sometimes something in the a player's character, their personality that gives you those vibes. And something about Morata in those moments has always been the question about him. Does he have the ice in his veins? And I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just a narrative, but that's how it felt watching it from here. Where does he go in his career? I'm sure he'll still have plenty of suitors. He's still well liked at Juventus and by the coaches and the players there. Whether or not he fits into what they're doing right now, I'm not sure, but he's not going to be without someone who wants him for sure.
What was your reaction to the way Jorginho stepped up and took that penalty? Because he just seemed so calm and cool, that as if, you know, they didn't need the goal and it was just a bonus for him to roll it in.
Echoes for me of the thing is that this was when Pirlo did it, it was the start of a shootout, but echoes for me of Andrea Pirlo and the Panenka against Joe Hart, where it's like, you know what, I'm not just going to score this, I'm going to do it in a way that makes a point. Now, Pirlo talked about that because he talked about Hart was on his line and was making such a big sort of gesture of jumping around and waving and making this big show of himself. And he thought, if I can do it this way, it's going to humiliate him. It's going to make him feel ridiculous. And that's going to actually have an impact for the rest of the shootout. Now, not quite the same as Jorginho's taking it at the end, but tell you what, that's some nerves of steel from a player who I really think has got to be in the Ballon d'Or conversation now. He's won the Champions League with Chelsea. He's been the most important player on this Italy team. For me, he's got to be in that conversation.
Yeah, it's absolutely a fair shout. Let me just ask you then on Roberto Mancini. You mentioned the word humiliating. And of course, his last match for Manchester City, the FA Cup final at Wembley in that loss to Wigan, was rather humiliating. What do you think Roberto Mancini will do ahead of the final? Do you think he'll make many changes? And how do you think just this match played out from a tactical perspective from Mancini?
I think he'll celebrate. I think he's been very big on that all the way through. You know what, we're here, we're having fun. This is what this is. We're a group having fun. So I think he'll enjoy himself. I think there's definitely some big questions for him, and perhaps some of it depends on who are the opponents in the final. But I felt that the substitutions were not great in this game. I think there are some questions about Federico Chiesa, even though he scored a brilliant goal. He's so individualistic that it almost feels like he's better off being the option off the bench, whereas Berardi is going to do something that's more conducive to what you're doing collectively, and especially now you've lost Spinazzola, maybe you miss that more. I think he has some thinking to do about whether Emerson was the right solution coming in for Spinazzola, because as I said before, it felt like he played well individually but it didn't quite knit. And so there are other options in this team. You could switch Di Lorenzo to left back, you could bring in Florenzi at either right back or left back. There are other options, so I think that's a big thing he's going to have to think about. And maybe even after two quite disappointing games for Ciro Immobile, he might consider whether or not to give Belotti the start up front, who's a very different option, plays this back to goal more. I think there's a lot to think about, and I think that it's too soon to work any of that out because they need to know who they're playing, and probably right now they all need to take a second and breathe and enjoy what's just happened.
Well, the sad thing for us is we have to wait until Sunday to see Italy play again, because that was an incredible match of football. I'm so glad you got to see it in person and that we've been able to reconnect during these Euros. Nicky, thank you very much for coming on Headers and Footers.
Anytime, Brendan.
You can read more of Nicky's work in The Guardian and hear her regularly on Football Weekly. Can understand why anyone who watched half as much Italian soccer over the last 2 decades has enjoyed this tournament as much as they have. I mean, there is no real consolation at all for losing in a semifinal, but Spain can be proud of this run at Euro 2020. I mean, yes, it was the missed chances that will haunt them, but Luis Enrique has worked wonders with a young team that looked like they might not make it out of the group, if you remember those games against Sweden and against Poland. Yes, Tuesday was the first semifinal at the Euros or a World Cup that Spain did not win, having made the final the last 5 times they reached the semifinal stage. But only Argentina at the World Cup in 1990 in Italy and Croatia at the last World Cup have won 2 penalty shootouts in the same tournament. It just doesn't happen. Spain did continue the trend of facing Italy, though. This was the 10th time that they've played at the Euros or a World Cup. That's more than any 2 European nations. And now Italy await either England or Denmark in Sunday's final. Wednesday's semifinal will have considerably louder support, as this tournament really has been a home tournament for the Three Lions. 60,000 fans expected in attendance at Wembley. The gambling lines will likely move a lot, with more money coming in Wednesday before kickoff. But as I'm recording this, England is costing you just 40 cents if you like the Three Lions to win in regulation. It's a pretty good price. England are minus 300 to advance if you want to lay the juice on the safer bet. But maybe the price is where it's at because of some history. England have won just one of their last 6 competitive games with Denmark. They drew 3 times, they lost twice. And the one victory came in the 2002 World Cup, which you need no reminding was a long time ago. Nearly 20 years. The Danes won their last trip to Wembley. Christian Eriksen actually scored a penalty in the Nations League. That's a game that England fans and writers want to forget, and that was only in October. If England lose to Denmark in Wednesday's semifinal, you won't have to listen to It's Coming Home until the World Cup in Qatar, which is less than 18 months away now. You can watch and listen to Headers and Footers every match night, as you know. Tomorrow night, after that semifinal, Grant Wall will join me. Thanks for joining me along this road. So here's to hoping we get another incredible semifinal on Wednesday. Thanks for kicking it with me.